Back to the man who killed Trayvon Martin. A judge has just set a $150,000 bond for George Zimmerman. He should be getting out of jail soon. In a surprise move, Zimmerman took to the stand and apologised to Martin's parents. The prosecutor not too happy about that. Here's how it played out in court.
I wanted to say I am sorry for the loss of your son. I did not know how old he was. I thought he was a little bit younger than I am. And I did not know if he was armed or not. Nothing further going.
And I'm sorry, sir, you're not really addressing that to the court. You're doing it here to the victim's family. Is that correct?
They are here in the court, yes.
I understand, but I thought you were going to address Your Honor, Judge Lester, not. So that's really addressed to the family and where the media happens to be, correct, Mr. Zimmerman?
No, to the mother and the father.
Okay. And tell me, after you committed this crime and you spoke to the police, did you ever make that statement to the police, sir? That you were sorry for what you'd done or they're lost?
No, sir.
You never stated that, did you?
I don't remember what I said. I believe I did say that.
You told that to the police?
In one of the statements, I said that I felt sorry for the family.
You did?
Yes, sir.
So that would be recorded because all those conversations were recorded, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right, our Martin Savage joins us now from Sanford, Florida, outside the complex where the proceedings were held. Martin Zimmerman's apology was unexpected. What other reaction from outside the courthouse?
Absolutely outraged. The family left without making any statement whatsoever. They quickly came out the front door of the courthouse and then were gone. The attorneys for Trayvon Martin's family said that it was one of the most outrageous things they had ever seen, and they certainly did not believe that it was a genuine apology on the part of George Zimmerman. It should be pointed out that apparently within the last couple of days, George Zimmerman had said through his attorney that he wanted to have a private meeting with Trayvon Martin's family and that he wished to discuss something with them. Well, now it appears clear what he wanted to discuss. He wanted to make some sort of an apology. His attorney said afterwards that he had wished that this had taken place not in a courtroom, but in that private setting. But Trayvon Martin's family and his legal team apparently had turned that idea down. So that's why George Zimmerman decided that the courtroom was the second best opportunity to make the statement he's apparently wanted to make for some time, he claims. But up until this point, he said his lawyers had advised him not to say anything.
What about the granting of the bond, Marty? A reaction to that?
Well, I think that it was anticipated going in that he probably was going to get bond. At least a lot of the legal experts we had spoken to anticipated, bond is a constitutional right in most cases in this country. And in this particular case, even though it was a no bond offense, an argument could easily be made, and was made by his attorney, that, look, George Zimmerman had been cooperating with authorities. He had always told them where he was, and he turned himself in the moment he had been charged. He maintains, Mark O'Mara that is, that he was not a risk, his client, to fleeing the country. They even handed over his passport. And then on top of that, said that he was not a danger to the community. In fact, the danger actually was to George Zimmerman by being out. But the attorney also argued it was better for his family, it was better for George Zimmerman, better for building a defense, that he'd be set free. $150,000, excuse me. That amount probably higher than many people anticipated, but I think it was probably within reach. The family will have to put up 10%. That's $15,000.
Yeah, you mentioned the sort of risks or perceived risk. What is security like around the jail and the courthouse? We've seen protests and all the rest of it. What is the mood in Sanford?
Well, there's certainly a great deal of concern. In fact, so much concern that the family members of George Zimmerman gave their testimony at today's hearing, if you saw it, over the telephone. They were frightened to appear in public to give their testimony because they say because of hate mail they've received and in some cases death threats that have been made. For George Zimmerman, well, you probably multiply it tenfold. There are a lot of people who will not be happy that after only 9 days in jail, he is now once again free. There will be certain people who will look at this and say that the deck is again stacked against the family of Trayvon Martin seeking any kind of justice. So the worry is that this very hearing and the fact that George Zimmerman's out on bond is going to restoke the emotions that we saw plenty of in the month leading up before his arrest. So there is a lot of concern, which is why George Zimmerman is not going to be released today, we are told, so they can iron out these very severe concerns they have about safety.
All right, thanks, Martin. Martin Savage there. Appreciate it, Marty. Let's bring in criminal defence attorney now and CNN legal analyst, Mark Najim. Joining us from Orlando. Mark, the lawyer for Trayvon Martin's parents say that George Zimmerman only has to come up with $15,000, 10% of the $150,000. Does the decision to grant him bond surprise you at all? I mean, what Marty was saying there, some people are going to be annoyed by this, but is it normal for people to get bond?
Well, I fully expected a bond. It's what we've talked about. As I saw the evidence, from what I've heard up until now, and now I've even heard more in court, there are big question marks hovering over this case. We know that he was not a risk of flight. Why? He turned himself in voluntarily. It was under the voluntary eye of Florida Department of Law Enforcement, apparently. There were conditions of bond that could be reached to make sure that there was no danger. And I think Mark O'Mara brought up, by attacking that affidavit, showed that the proof was not evident and the presumption not great according to the law. The judge made the right decision. I thought it would be $100,000, but $150,000 is well within the realm of the areas it should be. I've had many bonds set for cases and homicide cases with similar type of situations where there are real questions that need to be answered as the case unfolds and during the discovery process.
Yeah, so
if I might,
yeah, go on.
I was going to say, I think what's quite significant in this case, though, is the fact that, to me, the state came across as woefully unprepared. Their lawyer was excellent as far as his skill sets, but to have your lead detective go on the stand and say, I wasn't prepared, I didn't know that I was going to be called for a hearing, and then to have the prosecutor say, well, Your Honor, we weren't really expecting basically a mini trial. Well, you should have expected it, and the investigator should have been prepared to the teeth. He should have been up till 3 o'clock this morning preparing for the possibility that he may have been called. And now what's happened is critical evidence is now on the record by the lead investigator saying they don't know how the fight started. They don't know how if Mr. Martin was going back to the car or not. They don't, or Trayvon was going back to the car. They don't know any of that. And if they knew it, because we've all been saying, well, the state's got to have more evidence. Well, they've now said under oath that they don't have it. Those are critical points, and they should have been better prepared. Quite
extraordinary in that regard. So going back to what Martin Savage was saying, that some people are going to say, well, here it shows again that he's getting some sort of favoritism. In short, that's not the case. This is pretty normal. I don't see it at all. Right. I think that the second degree is a stretch in light of the information that's come out in court today. Right. And this is quite a lengthy proceeding, of course. When you have second-degree murder cases like this, normal, and how high are bonds usually set for these sorts of things? You say 150's in the ballpark? That's absolutely in the ballpark. I mean, I've seen them lower, I've seen them higher. I think this is in light of the fact that there's limited finances for this family. It's going to be a stretch for them to come up with $15,000. A bond is meant to secure one's appearance in court. It's not meant to punish somebody. So the judge apparently evaluated. We all knew that he was a very practical, smart legally, but he's also very common sense. And he said it higher than the family could comfortably afford, and enough to help ensure his appearance in court, which is exactly what a bond is intended to do. Yeah, indeed. And at the end of the day, he's not being convicted of anything yet, too. Yes, that's it. Some people are thinking that a bond hearing is meant for punishing, and how can a person get out of jail when they simply have a serious charge against them? Remember, there's a lot of questions in this. The entire Sanford Police Department, where I think a lot of the questions need to be directed as to what appears to be a very questionable, shoddy investigation. Don't dispute that, but reasonable people differ over the fact as to what happened and how he should be charged, if charged at all. That's why we have trials. But we don't incarcerate people in this country and presume their guilt without evidence and facts coming out. That's a rush to judgment that we see other countries doing, and we criticize every day. Well, if we can criticize them, we should be more vigilant to make sure we're doing it the right way. And as long as he is known to appear in court, then that's what we have trials for. It's why we have judges and juries, and we need to let this play out, and we need to trust the system in this situation, that it's now being taken care of properly. And that is great perspective and context to get. Thanks, Mark. Mark Najim there, CNN legal analyst.